Good morning, everyone. Grace and peace be with all of you this day. As you just heard, we are in the second of our two-week stewardship sermon series titled Be Rich, and the goal in this series is to help us to define and live out what it means to be rich as recipients of God's wonderful blessings on our lives. And the focus verse for the sermon series is the Apostle Paul's words to Timothy. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be willing and to be generous and willing to share. And last week, Pastor Sarah kicked off the series with this question: what does it mean to be rich? And she addressed a unique, distorted perception we have regarding being rich in our culture, while giving us three practical ways to be rich, to be generous and willing to share. And she gave us the three P's of generosity. Generosity that's a priority in our daily lives. It's a percentage of our income, but also progressive over time. Well, today, I'm wrapping up this series under this question: what does it mean to be rich towards God? And my goal is to help us see how the power of influence informs how we regard God's blessings in our lives. And the blessings that we have inform how we live, but also what we give to our relationships, to the community, and to our local church known as Trinity. So to start this morning, I just want to begin with a scenario that it's true for me, but I'm sure it's been true for many of you as well. How many of you have you ever went to the grocery store with the intent of buying 1, 2, 3 items and then you end up at the checkout line with like half a basket or half a cart full of groceries? You go into the grocery store thinking, I'm only going to buy these few things, and then you go through the aisles, and then you see other things, and all of a sudden, in the matter of time it takes for you to reach for something and place it in your cart or your basket, your mind goes from want to need. So when I go home with my few items, which is usually like a couple bags of groceries, my wife, for example, will go through the groceries with me. Oh, she'll say, you bought cookies. Yes, sweetheart, we needed those cookies. And then she goes through and she goes, great, so where's the bread you were supposed to buy? And it's not there. And then I try to save face and hold on to some sense of pride when I say, but sweetheart, those cookies, and I'm sure you've said this, they were on sale. So, it's just one of those things. And that's the power of influence, awareness in our lives we're seeing is needing. And for our lives, awareness is critical in sales and in marketing because it gives us the sense of disenchantment, the sense of being unhappy with what we have. And that is why if we don't have awareness, customers won't buy as much. And that is why companies, manufacturers, and advertisers keep a keen eye on product awareness in our lives. But years ago, that not being happy with what you have wasn't as present as it is today. That's years ago with all the before all the advertising on TV and on marketing and through the internet wasn't present. Years ago, people spent their money based on one thing. People purchased things based on one thing: need. Imagine that. People purchase things based on need. I think of my grandparents. They would replace something when it broke. How passé. We don't do that today. We don't replace things when they break. We replace things when the new model of the thing we already have, which is just fine, becomes available. We love to upgrade, and we upgrade when we see people that have upgraded. You go to a friend's house and they're serving food on that new upgraded countertop, or they're cooking their meal on that new upgraded stove, or you see a friend or a loved one who's walking around in a new upgraded coat. And the dynamic here is that when we see this awareness of what we don't have, and we become unhappy with what we don't have and discouraged, we start to scheme. We start to think, how can we get what we want? And the thing is, for all of us, the sense of unhappiness and this discouragement in having things that can make our life better all relate to awareness. And the thing is, awareness, it can work against us or it can work for us. It can work against us by making us feel unhappy or discouraged that our life could be better, and then all of a sudden we're looking in on our own lives. Or it can work for us by helping us see God's blessings on our lives and the many good things God has provided to help us have enjoyable lives. And thereby we don't look in on ourselves, but look into the lives of others. And this topic of awareness was true years ago when Apostle Paul's words to Timothy. Now, Timothy at this time was a young leader in the first church in Ephesus. And this was after Paul left the city. So while Timothy's trying to lead Christians in living differently, they were surrounded by all these false teachers who are teaching things contrary to the Christian message. And Timothy, in essence, as a young leader, is feeling very discouraged. So Paul is writing him this letter, not just for Timothy's encouragement, but for the encouragement of all the early Christians in that city. And this encouragement came through the central tenet, that all based on holding on to their faith in Jesus Christ. And that faith grounded in the birth, in the life, in the teachings, in the ministry of Jesus Christ, his death on the cross, his torture, his trial, death on the cross, and his resurrection into glorious everlasting life. And mindful of that faith was reflected in Jesus' trust and his awareness of God's blessings on his life in order to bless others and bring God's kingdom into our world. And Paul's words here are convicting, and they're going to be on the screen just to share with you. And Paul wrote to Timothy and all the early Christians, "As for those who in the present age are rich, command them not to be haughty, or to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but rather on God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." So what Paul is saying here is that we may be aware of what others have, and of course we're aware of what we have, but in actuality, when we look at our lives honestly, when we look at our lives, our health, our financial means, our abilities, our material goods, everything we have, Paul is saying, everything is a gift from God. It is God who richly, in essence, says, God who provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So rather than upgrade and have more, isn't it true? I mean, isn't it true that when we look at our lives and all that God has provided for us, our lives are wonderful? And the key thing here is that it requires no discipline. It doesn't require any effort on our part to be aware of what we don't have or what we could have. The culture will take care of that. But as Paul is saying, for us as Christians who believe and say we believe in Jesus Christ and seek to live our lives following Jesus Christ, his model of teaching and living, it is our responsibility to be aware of God's blessings on our life in order to share those blessings with others around us, to bring God's kingdom into our world. Because we can be honest, every financial decision you make, every financial decision regarding spending or saving is first made with the awareness of your own life. But Paul is saying to be good at being rich, Christians must always broaden that framework, to make it a habit to see the needs in our community, our neighborhoods, our schools, and our church, because if we're not aware, our awareness will always be reflected on our own lives. And when that happens, even though we are rich by God and God's blessings, we will no longer be compelled to live out good deeds. We will no longer share. We will no longer be generous. So Paul says they are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous and willing to share. So how does that relate to us? How does that inform our lives? Well, this is where the mission of the local church is key, to help all of us be aware of God's blessings on our lives, but also to help us be aware of bringing God's kingdom into our community and our world. And now I'm going to share with you unique elements of awareness here at Trinity. And if you're going out for breakfast after worship, and you can say, what did your pastor talk about in the pulpit? You can just say, Pastor Jim bragged throughout most of his sermon. And it's okay. Because right now I'm going to brag. Okay? Everyone okay with that? Doesn't matter, I have the microphone. So I see as a pastor how all of you are joined together as a congregation in being rich and bringing God's blessings from your life into our community and our world. So let's look back on 2014. I'm going to raise up a few key examples of how we have been rich as a congregation. Our Noah's Ark, back in 1980, our Noah's Ark, our preschool, came to life through nurturing children and learning and activities and a Bible-based curriculum. 88 children will be a part of Noah's Ark this year. You are helping support, through our congregation, one of the best preschools in our city. Our quilters, just recently, last month, shipped 193 quilts around the world through Lutheran World Relief. Now that's 193 quilts for one project. That's not counting all the quilts that are given throughout the year to people in our congregation, in our community. You are helping support a wonderful opportunity, a ministry of outreach through our quilters. Our food pantry. I mean, come on. It's the second largest in the city. We don't receive any government support, only through the generous contributions of Trinity members. 90 volunteers give of their time to help run our food pantry every week. And our food pantry serves just over 900 families, on the track to serving nearly 1,000 families a month. You are helping support and feed many hungry people in our community and the outlying communities of Eau Claire. Our Friends of Flynn ministry provides weekend meals, healthy snacks, socks, underwear, school supplies, books, and boots for children in need in our school district, especially for Flynn Elementary. And if you have a minute after worship, the woman who oversees the homeless needs through the Eau Claire School District is doing an adult forum after worship. I invite you and encourage you to be present. It is fascinating to hear what the needs are in our school system in Eau Claire, so please keep that in mind after worship. But through Friends of Flint, you are helping support and help kids succeed in school. Our international ministry through Mission Jamaica started in 1998, and since then you have helped build homes, you have distributed school supplies and household items to people living in poverty in Kingston, Jamaica. In our men's mission trip at Jebna Christian Academy, as you can see on the screen, you have helped build 2 school structures for that school. Bathrooms where the kids can use their bathrooms, and safe playground equipment. You are helping people in need internationally by sharing your gifts and being rich. And since we're in November, last year in 2013, our community Thanksgiving dinner, we fed just nearly 400 individuals, and that was nearly double the amount from 2012. A wonderful outreach ministry around the holidays. And then finally in 2010, our congregation was asked to participate in a congregation assessment survey to assess all the ministries in our congregation. And Russ Crabtree was the consultant we worked with. He did excellent work with our congregation. And I'm just going to share, you can probably have already read it on the screen, but I want to share what his summary statement was of our congregation based on that survey. Russ said, "You are a church with tremendous strengths. These are the strengths I don't see at 95% of the churches across the USA. You are a church with tremendous strengths. These are strengths I don't see at 95% of the churches in the USA." Oh, come on. Give yourself a round of applause. Isn't that great? Absolutely awesome. It's absolutely awesome. I know it's not Lutheran to show our emotions in worship, but it's okay to applaud and give thanks to God for the many good things we have done as a congregation in years past and looking at 2014, because we seek as a congregation to be rich and to share God's blessings to further God's kingdom in our world. And as we draw to the end of 2014, we're now planning for 2015. And part of that planning is our financial ministry plan. And right when we hear about financially supporting the church, some of us may want to check out, because you or someone you've known from another church may have had a bad experience from pastors in pulpits talking about money in the church. And I'll just address it right now. Pastors, I apologize for pastors that have done this. They either beg, bribe, or berate people to give of their dollars to the local church. They do it like this, generally speaking. They beg. They beg, "You need to give to the church, or else we'll just have to turn the lights off." Or they berate, "You haven't given enough to the church. You need to step it up." Or they bribe. "If you give $100 to the church today, the Packers will beat the Bears tonight." But in actuality, you won't hear that at Trinity. When you're not giving to the church, anytime you hear people giving to the church or giving to God, that is just a myth. Because honestly, we just heard from Paul. God provides everything for our enjoyment. We're not giving to anything. We're giving back. We're sharing what we've been given to spread God's kingdom and love in our world. So this week, you're going to receive a special mailing from Trinity. And in that mailing is going to be this commitment card that's on the screen and a letter. And I invite you to consider, and you and your spouse, if you're married, to consider what you're willing to financially give to the local church known as Trinity to support God's work in our midst. And for some of you, completing this card is just an annual thing. You've done it for years. And for others, you look at this card and think, what's this all about? Giving to the church in the long run, because honestly, our culture, we're so focused on the quick appeal and to give the dollar now to this need so it can be addressed and move on. But here it's thinking throughout the rest of next year, what can you financially give and contribute and share to the local church to support our congregation with greater strength as we plan and look forward ahead to the year of 2015? Because all the events I just shared with you, those are just a few. They were a result of your generosity, and for that, I am forever grateful for what you have done for God's work in our community, in our world. But just imagine what we could do collectively when we bring all our gifts together, and what we could do as a congregation. Some of you can fill this out and mail it in next week. Others of you may just do all your banking online. We can set everything up online and just take your commitment from a various account at your bank. That's what my wife Michelle and I do. We do everything giving-wise online. So we have those two opportunities. But imagine what we can do with the Apostle Paul and his words. They are to do good, to be rich in good deeds, generous, and willing to share. Imagine what we could do in the lives that would be restored, the relationships that would be empowered, and God's presence real in tangible ways in our community, in our midst, and throughout the world. So let's consider that commitment card as we look ahead to 2015. Thank you for all your generous support this past year. So let's move forward together as a congregation with great strength, and let's be rich together. Thanks be to God. Amen.